coming.
My pleasure.
So the theme here is going after the bigger prize. And why don't we start, just to get people familiar, on this coast, maybe they're not familiar with Yext as we are in New York, but tell us what you do at Yext.
Well, importantly, so first of all, by show of hands, how many folks, we see cloud disrupting essentially every department in the enterprise. How many folks are sort of in the CIO or CTO kind of land in that world? Okay, cool. And how many of you are in the marketing technology space? Okay, so there's really two ways fundamentally to attract, and there's really two areas that are being fundamentally disrupted by cloud within the enterprise, and importantly, Yext is focused on the marketing organization, CMO, and at Yext we provide, there's really fundamentally two kinds of CMOs. There's B2B and B2C CMOs, and B2B CMOs have software technologies like Marketo and Salesforce and ExactTarget that enable them to meet their marketing goals. And there's actually not a whole lot of stuff as focused on B2C, or more ad techy type stuff. And importantly, within B2C, there's two types of CMOs. You have product companies, and then you have a really specialized kind of company called a location marketer or geo-marketer. And Yext is squarely focused on the geo-marketing CMO, enabling a geo-marketing CMO to manage their local content, their local listings, their local social pages, their local store pages, campaigns, and analytics through our geo-marketing cloud.
Let's talk about geo-marketing, right? A lot of companies have been going after this holy grail of whether it's mobile marketing or retail,
yep.
Real-world physical store
yep.
marketing.
Yep.
No one's been able to really crack it. We've seen a lot of waves of companies, come and go. Some of them are still with us, right? But I think in terms of everyone from the Yelps to the Groupons to now a lot of geo-marketing advertising companies.
Yep.
You guys started actually as a pay-per-call company, right? And then you decided to switch to what you're doing today. So why don't we start with that?
The old story. We started off as a pay-per-call company back in 2007, built a pretty big company. What we fundamentally saw being disrupted was the Yellow Pages. And the Yellow Pages were a $20 billion industry, and as eyeballs shifted from print to digital, there was a big gap between where geo-marketers could spend their dollars, because it was always possible for, when e-commerce came along, and e-commerce got huge. E-commerce was $400 billion in the United States last year. It wasn't really possible for marketers to use their digital dollars to drive offline sales, just online sales. It was always more efficient to get someone to click to buy. So we built a pay-per-call company, but we saw a bigger opportunity along the way. And so we saw a bigger opportunity to provide these geo-marketing enterprises with a basic presence suite that would enable them to capitalize on this massive shift. And so e-commerce, $400 billion last year, but offline local commerce was $6 trillion in the United States last year. So offline commerce, 15 times bigger than online commerce. And with the rise of mobile, with everyone walking around with smartphones in their pockets, finally marketers are going to be able to actually do one of two things off mobile and drive one of two actions. And our view is basically that mobile ads are going to either drive a download or an in-store visit. And those are the sort of two key goals in mobile. And mobile advertising, is growing enormously from 10 to 19 billion, even globally just this year. So mobile is going to enable a geo-marketing renaissance. And our software, we started off with pay-per-call. We sold that original business to IAC back in 2011 after we spun it out. We started the new Yext just 3 years ago, actually.
And that is, so you have a lot of products, but the one that I'm most familiar with is basically if you are a local business, whether it's national or just a small business, you can go onto Yext and you can basically update all of your information across all the online directories, whether it's Super Pages, Yellow Pages, Yahoo, right?
That's exactly right.
And you do it once and you control that, because you might not even have a website, but people find you through these directories, right? So that's the first step, and then what do you do after that?
Well, we've got a bunch of different products, and so let's take Citibank, one of our customers during Hurricane Sandy, which decimated downtown Manhattan and parts of Long Island. They had to quickly push out which stores were closed and which of their retail branches were open and which ones were closed, what the hours were. Importantly, they waived fees at a number of ATMs downtown. They used Yext, they used our platform to actually log in and do that, and then as Citibank logs into Yext to update their core location information, whether it's from an ATM or whether it's a store, that information then syncs across Google, and it syncs across Yelp, it syncs across Yahoo, Bing, other mapping providers, Facebook, all those different places so that consumers can find the right data whenever they're looking for it.
And how does that position you in terms of having this inventory of local data? What can you drive off of that in terms of local ads, in terms of other transactions?
Well, the way we think about it is if you ever found the wrong information in the map, we sort of set out to help solve that problem. And so when you can provide a mapping provider with authoritative information from that client, that's sort of a basis for the first thing. Now, when you begin to, with a local digital presence, then you can fundamentally begin to layer all kinds of localized experiences on that. A local ad can't exist without a local offer. If you're walking down the street, Sunglass Hut can't put out a promoted tweet without for a particular store that's around the corner without knowing that there is a store around the corner and that there's an offer for Eric inside right now. And so our vision is to enable a brand like Sunglass Hut to put out a promoted tweet for when it's sunny out for the store that's right there, and then for you to be able to tap that promoted tweet and land on a localized landing page with information about that particular Sunglass Hut with an offer for Eric. And then when you walk inside, we want to be able to show attribution and show that you showed up. And so every geo-marketer is going to want to have local content, local listings, and importantly, we're launching a product this week called Pages.
Pages, what's that?
Pages is a product that allows us to, allows a brand like Citibank or Sunglass Hut to take all that local content that's in Yext, that's in our software already, and create a web or mobile store locator with localized landing pages that use the same content, such that you really can update once, update everywhere, one and done. And so Pages, here's just a quick screenshot of this, lets a brand easily create directory pages for the web and mobile that have all of their localized content, all their basic content, all their custom URL schemes that they then can link their business listings to, and they can hang off their own sites and build mobile apps on top of all using our stuff. And we're really excited about this product.
That's great. You're launching that. You're announcing that right here.
We are announcing that right here. You can call us now and buy it. For those of you who raised your hand.
Terrific. So let's take a little step back. So you obviously, actually, let's look at this.
Yeah. Well, one thing.
That chart? That's an interesting chart.
This is our revenues, and we're willing to talk about this a little bit. So as I told you, we started this about 3 years ago in 2011. It's been a little bit over 3 years. In our first year, we did 2.7 million. Again, this is all recurring SaaS revenues. In 2012, our second year, we did 14.7 million. Last year, we did 33.8 million of recurring SaaS. And this year, plan is 56 million. So we grew 136% last year to 2.4x. Importantly, we did so in a capitally efficient way. This year, we're going to grow about over 60%. We have north of 100% retention from our customers. All enterprise, we have about 114% net retention on a net basis. And importantly, as I said, we only burned about $6 million last year as we grew this fast.
So your net loss was $6 million on more than $50 million of revenue. That's pretty good.
Thanks. Well, it all depends on the growth, right? So I wouldn't like that if we were flat, but as long as we continue to grow north of 60% a year, which we think we can for a long time based on our.
But let's compare that to another enterprise company that just filed for an IPO, which is totally different.
Well, they have a much better looking CEO.
Yes,
and his sneakers are way better than these boots. These are like New York boots. I mean, these are probably from like John Barbados or something.
But that's interesting. So let's talk about that, right? I mean, we had Aaron Levy on here, and his whole approach is that you can't grow fast enough. And obviously, you look at the numbers, right? There's a land grab, and he's spending all of the money that he's been raising and more, to be as big as he can. You guys are obviously growing fast. You're a little earlier in your growth, although give it a few years and you'll be right up there. And it's amazing. And but yet you sound like that sounds a little bit more reasonable from a capital efficiency perspective, that you're losing $6 million on $50 million. Yep. So I'd like to see a profit, but maybe someday.
Yeah, well, and actually we will flip to profitability in 2015. which is really important to us. And we see 2015 numbers. As I said, this year will be 56. We see 2015 in the mid-80s, and then we see 2016, 120, 130, and those kinds of things. Just if you kind of take out our 3-year plan. But importantly, what concerns me most when I look at the way that SaaS companies grow and they have huge losses is when they invest primarily their funds in SG&A. I think it's really important that that SaaS companies are disciplined and invest in not just SG&A, which is important because you have to grab land. There's a land grab going on in the space, but you also got to invest in R&D, right? I got to tell you, the most exciting thing I saw today, I was totally blown away by Indoor Atlas. And did you guys see that? That was unbelievable. And by the way, I'm sort of I know my way around this geo stuff, and I've never seen anything that can use a magnetic field to get to that level of precision. That's the kind of fundamental technology that would be developed at Bell Labs or something. And I hope that $168 million of losses that we saw last year at Box, that some piece of it, that some chunk of it is going to some crazy guys in Finland that are trying to build indoor positioning that's the inverse of GPS. And so when you look at the way that the capital is spent, we've got to make sure that enterprise is focused not just on sort of, building out sales folks and having an efficient CAC, and all that stuff is really important. You have to have strong ratios and strong SG&A. We've got to make sure that we continue to focus on fundamental technology. Because those are the things that create breakthroughs that actually really change the world in a positive way.
So what are the fundamental technologies you're investing in?
Well, I think we might try to invest in acquiring this Indoor Atlas company that you saw. Because apparently we need an office in Finland, although my guess is that we can't afford them. Look, before Yext, it was not possible for Citibank to update information instantly across all these different mapping providers. And so during Hurricane Sandy, when New York was shut down, or call another one of our customers, Federal Express, where they have drop boxes and pins on the maps, and you got to know what that last pickup time is. Every time you find better information, it's because we made a gigantic investment, a $20 million balance sheet bet to go out and to essentially create a relationship with the world's leading mapping providers that let us update their physical indexes in real time. Because this gets back to the bet and the journey when we started off, 7 years ago. We sold off our other business and we started this new digital presence thing. We didn't have any relationships with Yahoo or Yelp or Microsoft and any of these guys. And when we went to them and said, hey, open up Bing's core index and let us update the phone numbers in real time in your local database, they were like, who are you? And so we basically had to show up with our checkbook and said, we'll guarantee a certain amount, open it up, and we did. And that was a big bet, and that was the use of the funds for R&D that created a fundamental new capability that if we were gone, that wouldn't exist in the world.
Do you have that relationship with Google?
We have the ability to post into Google's social local pages, which actually do happen pretty fast, and Google Plus pages are what appear in Google Maps.
Okay, so it's not a direct access to it.
There's a posting, so the way that there's
I just
different
asked
stacks.
because they've had different attitude to local companies. I'm wondering if that attitude has changed.
Well, Google takes in data from a number of sources, as does any mapping provider. Right? So Apple uses TomTom. You can just go to your Apple Maps and there's credits there. And everybody uses different sources of maps. The way that the indexes work are a little bit different in different places. And there's essentially different trust levels for different data sources. So we typically are a data source for most of the mapping providers in the world.
What's your take on iBeacon and how that's working out in retail?
Well, I thought it was pretty awesome until I saw Indoor Atlas, and now I'm not sure it's necessary anymore. They might have just totally blown the whole thing. I don't mean to just keep harping on that, but they might have made the whole thing not even necessary. Now, the one thing that they haven't solved is the consumer experience, right? So iBeacon uses low energy Bluetooth and wake up an app. And actually, in iOS 7.1, one of the really exciting things is that it can open up an app without even, if it's not even running on your phone. And an Android app, importantly, can also basically register to listen for UUIDs with major or minor values that let you do this kind of stuff. So I think iBeacon has, you see a confluence of really two macro trends. You have mobile, and then you have the Internet of Things, and iBeacon is essentially the intersection of that.
Right. And then what are you seeing in terms of adoption, either on the consumer side, it's just built in, but on the retail side?
Well, I got to tell you, one of the really exciting things is that Apple decided that was the standard. And when they make a standard, it's going to be a standard, and that's kind of cool. And Android, is a fast follow there. And so, in terms of adoption, I think you see a lot of folks tinkering around this. You see a lot of hype. there's not a lot of people really doing, physical gigantic installs in these things. I think there's a lot of like kind of pieces of the stack. I know Qualcomm has a really interesting product called Gimbal, which is actually doing all the MLB iBeacon stuff, which is kind of cool, so that like when you sit down or you're in a baseball stadium, your phone can direct you around to your seat and service it to your seat. And so this is all the kind of fundamental location-aware stuff. Again, that if R&D is invested there, I think we're going to see a much bigger payoff for the end user, whether it's an end user within an enterprise or a consumer.
Right. So, getting back to the original premise of this talk,
Yep.
Which we've kind of been dancing around, right? You had a business that was a pretty decent business, wasn't as big. At what point did your new business eclipse what you were doing in your old business?
It was actually very fast. I mean, we like to characterize, some folks have characterized what we did as a pivot, and that's actually a little bit not right. Because a pivot implies that you're going in a direction, and then you just change direction. What we actually did, and I'm not sure of a word to describe this, but we were going in a direction, and then I jumped off the train and took two amazing engineers and just started a new company within the same cap table and started a whole other train. And so there was an existing business that was doing 30 million of revenue and 7 or 8 million of EBITDA and had grown pretty fast. But the new business, within 18 months, had really just sort of, in terms of promise, eclipsed everything. And so we basically used the original business to finance the crazy new idea as we were building train tracks, and built these train tracks into Bing and into all these other partners. And so a pivot, we didn't really change direction. We have an existing business, and that business is now, the old business is now a unit of ISC, Interactive.
And how did you convince your board to let you do that?
Step number one, when you want to do something crazy, is you definitely don't tell your board about it. Why would you do something like that?
So, okay, but at some point...
Do you think Levy told his board he was going to go out and burn $168 million in year 7? No way. You just do it. You go, and then you're like, and then you tell them about what's, then you get out there and you tell them what you did. After you've done it, you say, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it.
Okay. And I hope they're watching on the live stream. That's not the last time that you did that, right? You recently, you took a page from that playbook and you started an interesting mobile app called Confide within Yext.
We sure did.
So tell us about that. Is that the Snapchat for...
How many of you folks have Snapchat on your phones? That's it? Really? Come on. How many of your folks' kids use Snapchat? All right, a little bit bigger. Okay. Well, I started using Snapchat this summer, and I started using Snapchat actually at Yext to do a bunch of talking with employees. And importantly, the way that you use Snapchat is you take a picture of something and then you write some text on it. And when we started talking about like deal points and discussions and actually cursing people out because they F up a project, over Snapchat, you have to take a picture first, and I was like, this is kind of a dumb use case. I didn't want to take a picture of, say, a conference room and say, you messed up again. And so we saw an opportunity, kind of like, there's a LinkedIn for Facebook. We saw an opportunity to make a prosumer ephemeral messaging application that professionals could use in their professional communications that was focused around text, had a focus around security, and had an anti-screenshotting device. And so we launched Confide. I took 2 mobile engineers off the Yext team, started it, went to the board and said, hey, by the way, just so you know, we make this app, and by the way, we're gonna make it a new company. But what we're gonna do to keep things fair is we're gonna give Yext 19.9% of the company. And so Yext has huge upside, but really for Confide to have a chance, it's got to have a new cap team, right? How are you possibly going to recruit all the great people and bring in the venture capital and put the team together that you're going to need to do this? So we put them in, we gave Yext a piece, and then I found a great founding team to go with these engineers, and now they're going, and the app is now ranked in 50 app stores across the country, across the world. It's being used in 108 different countries, and we're just pleased as punch with the numbers so far.
Yeah, right. So, in what do you know about the usage? Like, who's using it? I mean, you kind of don't know, right?
Well, I use it. I mean, and I know that pretty well.
Okay, how do you use it?
Oh, well, I use it primarily to, as I said, I chew people out like a lot, and I'm, here's sort of the basic premise. There's a lot of stuff you'd be willing to say in person, but not put in writing. And so, think about like those times when you're like, hey, call me, right? I gotta call me about this, this item. I don't want to send you an email about it. And every time you do that, that's when we want you to use Confide in your professional career. And so for me, when someone's like, hey, I see this person used to work at Yext, or you work with this person, what do you really think of them? If I write them an email, I'm like, hey, this person was solid, XYZ. That's a fake email. It's not a real, authentic communication. And so we created Confide to make it possible for a professional to actually tell the truth, and tell the truth digitally in an asynchronous fashion, so that you didn't have to get in the phone to do it. And so we saw a huge gap in digital communications, and we're really out there to beat the permanent record. We think it's crazy that everything we say is on the record forever. Imagine if everything that you'd ever said in your life verbally to someone else was on the record, and the other person had a copy.
But it's interesting. It's the
For me, that'd be very bad. I don't know about you, Eric.
It's the Mission Impossible self-destructing message, right?
Well, it is, and it really importantly is that the sender, this is not like NSA stuff, right? Like the concern is not like, hey, the government is monitoring this. This is really between me and you, where, hey, I might, when you're reporting for TechCrunch, or Demo, or wherever you've been, in all these different places, if I wanted to tell you something, and I didn't really want you to have it on the record, you media folks actually invented the term off the record originally.
That's right.
And so, when I wanted to tell you something off the record, I'd be more likely to confide it to you than I would be put into an email.
But you're just then relying on my memory.
Yes. Well, but then you can't forward it on, and you can't do something.
Exactly. All right. Well, we have just a few minutes left. Where do you want Yext to be in 5 years from now?
Oh, well, in 5 years from now, Yext is going to be powering the digital presence for half of the geomarketing enterprises in the world. And so today, we've identified 2,300 geomarketing companies in the United States that have more than 25 locations. Our market share is already at 13.5%. We plan to be at 1,000, which is roughly 50% market share over the next 4 or 5 years. And we think we can get there just sort of based on our trajectory. We think we're going to be at 25 to 30% actually by the end of this year from what we're seeing so far. That's just the United States. And so we see an opportunity to build one of the biggest SaaS companies on the planet for CMOs. And so within the United States, we see a total addressable market of billions of dollars, again, in recurring revenue that we can have a huge share of. And globally, this year we're launching networks in Germany, in the UK, Australia, and Canada. And actually we'll be launching those shortly, probably this summer, depending on a few things and how those play out. And then after that, we're gonna be out there. And so, what we want to enable is any geo-marketer, that is any marketing department that's focused on, hey, I want to get people to show up somewhere. We want to give them the tools to create a digital presence, a basic digital presence, and then to get people to show up into a store and then be able to track it.
So when you made this shift, in 2009?
2010.
2010. You didn't know really how it was going to turn out, obviously. But what gave you the confidence to bet the company on it?
Oh, you just know. It's intuition. And you have to basically take big bets in technology. Small bets are guaranteed to fail. That's why I respect, Levy, Aaron, what they're doing at Box. If he was betting small all along, they would be guaranteed to have a small outcome. The only reason they have a chance at a big outcome is because every time they just keep upping the ante. And when you do that, then and you think big and you have the courage, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the others around you have courage, and you can and see the future with you. And so in that way, you can essentially define the future.
Great. Well, I think we'll end it with that.
Cool. Thank you, Eric.
Very much.
Cheers.